Namaste. Welcome to our next talk on the Bhagavad Gita. Let's back up just a little bit. Krishna is saying now, this is the 30th verse of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He who dwells within all living bodies remains forever indestructible. That's the first half. Who is this he? There are two he's. The truth is, we are one with God irrevocably and inseparably. So wherever you and I are, God is. So we, as spirits, as selves or spirit selves, Atmans, we are living within this body, or I am living in this body, and so is God. Because if I wasn't one with God, it wouldn't exist. Just poof, I'd be gone. So it's important to realize this, that we're always living within life. And we can't be separated. The idea of you're a sinner and therefore you're cut off from God is impossible. Adolf Hitler was as much one with God as Krishna was. But Hitler didn't know it. But he will in a future life. There are people that hate that idea because they want him to suffer forever, but that's ridiculous. And he will suffer terribly. And he will have to save the lives of as many people as he took lives from. So I hope that's not in my future. I hope I wasn't Genghis Khan or anyone like that. But again, we're back to the fact you do not grieve for people. You understand the divine is going on in its plan. Anandamay Ma said this to me one time. You must realize that the divine will is being done through you at all times. So that was my homework, she said for me. All right, so then he says, even if you consider this from the standpoint of your own caste duty, you ought not to hesitate. Now, we'll talk about caste actually in some detail later on, because it isn't what people think it is. Because in India, they took a metaphysical, spiritual thing and tried to turn it into a social thing. And of course, with who's above another person and who's beneath, etc. So there's a lot of prejudice about the idea of caste, but there's the genuine caste, and Krishna will tell us this very intelligently also. Even if you consider this from the standpoint of your own caste duty, caste is varna, it means color. And it has to do with the predominant color in your aura. There are 4 castes, and the 4 basic psychological types, from lesser evolved to higher evolved, and they have this color in the aura. We'll go into that now. But each caste has what it is meant to do to help others. Caste is not privilege, caste is obligation. But ego, of course, spoiled it. So he's of the Kshatriya caste, he's a warrior. So as a warrior, he has to protect the innocent from the evil. And the evil are gathered there on the battlefield, and if they win, they will oppress the entire Indian subcontinent, because there were people from every part of India gathered there at Kurukshetra. So evil, harsh dictatorship will come on them. if you don't defeat them. So you're fighting, you Arjuna, are fighting for everyone else in this land. It's rather a heavy obligation, but there it was. Even if you consider this from the standpoint of your own caste duty, you ought not to hesitate. See, that's another thing we like to do is hesitate, pull back, and not just go right through and do what as sadhus, sadhakas, yogis, we need to do. For to a warrior there is nothing nobler than a righteous war. And believe me, the struggle to attain divine consciousness is the noblest struggle there is. Happy are the warriors to whom a battle such as this comes, it opens the door to heaven. And so with all of us who are yogis. It isn't easy to be a yogi. It isn't easy, it isn't simple. But it's the only thing that's worthwhile. Ultimately, you'll discover that. So we are happy, we are blessed, and we should actually be cheerful. A yogi should always be optimistic because every single day you can move forward in your whole conscious evolution. It won't be a jump clear to the end, but today can be ahead of yesterday. Therefore, we should literally be happy, cheerful, and optimistic. It opens a door to heaven. That is, it opens a door to consciousness that will take us beyond all change, beyond all possibility of pain, anxiety, fear, anything that would upset us or even just cause us discomfort. It will be behind us. I remember my Aunt Faye told me a joke about a man who was given what were supposed to be rejuvenation pills. That if he took them, he'd become younger. And he believed it. And he was about 50 some years old. So anyway, he took the pills and he went to sleep at night. And in the morning, when his wife called him, wake up, get up. He's called to her, well, I'll get up, but I'm not going to go to school. So we won't have to worry. We won't have to go to school. We'll go to smarter levels. But if you refuse to fight this righteous war, you'll be turning aside from your duty. Now, I've seen people turn aside all my life. In fact, I have seen yogi after yogi after yogi who were so devoted, so dedicated, so resolved, I thought they're going straight through to the end. And they didn't. The pace that they were in the race became slower, maybe a few steps backward, and then suddenly dissolve. And they're no longer on the field of higher consciousness. I mean, that's terrible. But I saw it over and over again. And that is a worse death than bodily death. Because bodily death doesn't go with you into your next life. In that life, now you're alive. But spiritual death can go with you from life to life and keep you from awakening and keep you from living the real life. Because when you turn away from such an awesome thing, that is an awesome act of will, sankalpa in Sanskrit. And if you make such an act of will, it's not going to disappear between this life and your next one. It will be there, and your whole will and mind will be turned toward the realm of death, of spiritual death. Yes. There were some people who threw over the spiritual life. And someone who was keeping on the path and who cared about them asked Paramahansa Yogananda, how many dozen lives will it be before they come back to the path? And he said, don't say dozens, say hundreds. Now, that's not true of everybody, but it can happen. It can happen. So you see, it is also a perilous thing to start following the path to eternal life. That's true also. There's nothing without risks. So you will be a sinner and disgraced. And this does happen and goes into future lives. Sad to say. I don't say that to make anybody feel apprehensive, because you should learn to be optimistic about yourself, but don't necessarily be optimistic about your present, because your present may be your worst enemy right now. So anyway, he says that if you do abandon your duty, people will speak ill of you throughout the ages. In other words, you will actually carry this mark, this disgrace, for ages, because people don't just get born and die and born and die and born and die. You can have 800 and 1,000 years between each incarnation. To a man who values his honor, how about to a man who values his peace of mind and well-being? That is surely worse than death. The warrior chiefs will believe it was fear that drove you from the battle. You will be despised by those who have admired you so long. Your enemies also will slander your courage. They will use words which should never be spoken. What could be harder to bear than that? I'll tell you what's harder to bear than that. Your own condemnation. Your higher self saying things are not right. The path is not being gone upon. It's not being traveled on. You haven't kept your honor. You had not the requisite courage to keep you going. And what excuse will there be for you? Because you will be your own harshest judge. And you will pass the harshest judgment on yourself. This is the truth. So then we come to this very interesting segment, act, we might say, in this drama. Die and you win heaven. So you have to die to go to heaven, don't you? Conquer and you enjoy the earth. In other words, if you go through the death of ignorance, you will win that higher life, even in higher worlds, and hopefully never come back to a place like this. But if you don't escape the round of birth and death, but you fight the good fight and you fight it well, then you will have your present life glorified, and the future life will be a life of happiness and ease and inner confidence. So then, how to manage it? Stand up now and resolve to fight. You don't sit, you stand. It's very interesting. that in real religion, worship is done standing. In the truly authentic Christian church, the Eastern Christian church, the Eastern Orthodox church, everyone stands through the service. Now, westernized groups have started having pews and sit down. They're not worshiping God as they should know to do. Because you have to be there and attent and you're ready to move. Sitting down means you just cut it off. After all, I grew up in a church. I don't blame the people. They walked into church, they turned their mind off. When they stepped out of the church, they turned it back on because what they were told in church was beyond reason and beyond good sense. But when you're working for reality, you don't get to do things like that. So you have to stand up and go through everything that you need to do. It's like when you're sick, you have to follow the regimen, you have to follow, do this, don't do that, eat this, don't eat that, and take this medicine. And there's no other way around it. So realize, he says, that pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat are all one and the same. What does he mean? He means anything you look at in this present life, you think, oh, it's good, oh, it's bad, oh, I like it, oh, I don't like it, don't want that to happen to me, I do want that to happen to me. It's all one and the same. It's a fever dream. And the fever needs to break, and you need to awake and go into higher life. Do this, he says, and you cannot commit any sin. Now that sounds like a good spot to end. We haven't quite gone our 20 minutes, but we've certainly learned a lot of wisdom from Krishna.